Blog Talk Radio.
BDPA Radio showcases IT entrepreneurs, technology experts, and computer science academics. We highlight people with a passion for educating our youth in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. BDPA Radio Show serves the BDPA members, sponsors, entrepreneurs, educational institutions, and the Black community. BDPA Radio, linking business, education, and technology.
Well, welcome everyone to the BDPA Radio Show. Tonight is Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month, September the 10th, 2013. And joining me in the virtual studio is Mr. José Ignacio Salzara, and he is founder and managing director and of CIO EUREKA, and award-winning author of The Uncomfortable CEO, Making Information Technology Overcome Business Uncertainty. And our second guest tonight is Ms. Carol Bell, Chapter President of BDPA Huntsville. So we're going to jump right into our show. I'd like to welcome Jose. Jose, how are you tonight?
Excellent. How are you doing, Franne?
Just fine, thanks. It really is a pleasure to have you on the show. Wayne Hicks was sharing your bio with me, and I wanted to take a moment to share some highlights with our listeners. We're really very excited to have you on the show. I understand that you're an international citizen who's lived on 3 continents and is an entrepreneurial, highly accomplished, award-winning global IT executive and CIO. One of the reasons that we're really excited to have you on our show tonight is that you are the author of a book entitled The Uncomfortable CEO, Making Information Technology Overcome Business Uncertainty. And you bring with you an illustrious career as the former Latin American CIO of Procter & Gamble and current founder and managing director of CIO EUREKA, based in Chicago, Illinois. So welcome to our show, and again, it really is a pleasure to have you. I know that you are named by the Hispanic IT Executive Council as one of 100 America's most influential Hispanics in information technology in 2008 to 2011. So again, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Franne. I'm very happy being here.
You're welcome. Oh, thank you. Now, I know you've written a business and technology book, and I was hoping that you could share with our audience a little bit more about the book. Why did you give it the title that you chose, and who really is the target audience?
Excellent. Well, the strongest CEOs do approach work in a very consistent fashion. They get comfortable being totally uncomfortable. So in a way, they are more concerned about who is right and how the work needs to be done. For instance, every time I think about a progressive idea in history, culture, business, or even information technology, being comfortable was not necessarily the first thing that happens. So everybody feels very uncomfortable doing some innovation capabilities. So in a way, disruptive ideas always, by definition, have cutting edge. And cutting edge are always rarely safe. So they are very uncomfortable. Now, your second question will be, who's going to be the target of my readers? So all the people who really aspire to become C-suite, or they have plans to get to that level.
That is a really powerful concept, and in a way it's sort of contrarian in that in order to really kind of move forward, you've got to be uncomfortable. And if you want to get to the C-suite, you've really got to kind of adopt this perspective. Now, because you're kind of looking at things in a different way, you're really focusing on some of the blind spots that information technology leaders have. Can you tell me more about what some of those blind spots are and why that's important?
Yeah, sure. For instance, if you happen to be a CEO, you will look at IT in a very unique way. So you will always want to have any clarity about the business value that the IT capabilities bring to the party. So this is one of the things that you are expecting from IT. The other one, you are expecting how to improve the shareholders' return on information technology investment. Another example that you are expecting every single day, or in a way you will dream to have this kind of things, you want to get closer to your CIO. And you want to have this proximity with the CIO in a way that you will understand him or her. So in other words, for instance, my advice in the book is that we should never use IT buzzwords. Because IT buzzwords, by definition, will create a fence between us and our colleagues. And these are the 4 or 5 items that I refer about the IT blind spots. So the more we just our message closer to the CEO community, the better it will be for us to move forward into IT capabilities.
So this whole concept that, and I do think a lot of CIOs sort of struggle with, or sometimes get a little defensive around this concept of business value, and they certainly recognize the importance of shareholder value. So that defensiveness, so what you're saying is that sometimes gets in the way.
Yes, actually, in some cases, we simply erode shareholder value because we lead projects that may not necessarily be fully connected with the business priority. So the company is investing on things that, at the end of the day, will probably a total waste of money or value for the corporation. For instance, I can give you a couple of true facts that really happens around the landscape. So, for instance, more than half of the total capital investment goes into IT capabilities, which in a way is great because the companies are investing a lot of money. But in the same tone, if you happen to be talking to the business leaders and say, hey, what is the payout you are getting out of this investment? In many cases, they will tell you, friend, I don't even know what is the payout. So this really puts IT in a very odd situation because we are asking for money, but in the company, very few people really understand the value from this money. So in a way, IT ends up being a very expensive capability because you see the cost, but you don't see the value.
So that really kind of leads to a situation where the problem kind of gets worse rather than better then.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. And for instance, it doesn't take a lot of time for you as the CEO to read any news in the industry, where you will discover that from the Fortune 500 companies, 15% of them have had major issues with larger SAP implementation or ERP implementations. And my hypothesis on the book is that the truth of the matter, the issue is not necessarily the system per se. The issue is that the business leaders are expecting totally something different. And if you ask for money and you don't explain the value, that will be kind of the genesis of the problem. So what I'm trying to do in my book is to really help business leaders understand the value of IT, and likewise helping IT professionals to explain the contribution in plain business language to their fellow colleagues.
That really gets at kind of the root of the success, being able to explain the IT contribution in business terms.
Yes.
So now you've written a good portion of your book in terms of leadership trends. What are some of those key trends, and why are they relevant to the BDPA iRadio audience?
Well, most of the trends are about having. If you happen to be a CIO, for instance, most of the people are being taught to be an expert on technology, an expert on all these complex items that we are doing in IT. But the truth of the matter, if you want to be an executive, you need to learn how to explain your concepts very clearly, how to listen very effectively, and how to build bridges between you and your business partners. And clearly, at the end of the day, you also need to be an expert on IT capabilities. But the business leaders are expecting a person who really communicates very well with them. And oftentimes, we don't have this kind of skill sets embedded into our leadership training materials. Okay.
And so an obvious solution from your perspective is by creating this book, you're giving, as you said, the CEOs a window into understanding the CIOs and the CIOs window into understanding what the CEOs need.
Yes. For instance, something that I'm doing in the book is that there are 9 chapters on the book, and each chapter to talk about kind of the theory about this subject matter, but then towards the end of the chapter there is a to-do list, 2 or 3 ideas that I'm asking the CEO to do in conjunction with the CIO. And in a way, this to-do list will force the CIO and the CEO to sit down together and work collaboratively on solving a given problem.
Okay. I noticed that in the book. In fact, one of the things I noticed that your book, your foreword, was written by Jorge Montoya. How did you have the opportunity to have him write the foreword, and what's your relationship with him?
Well, Jorge Montoya used to be the Procter & Gamble president of Latin America. And when he was there, I was his CIO. So I happened to work with him for several years, sometime in the past. So he knows my style, and he was the guy who appointed me to the CIO role in Latin America. So he and I work each other very, very well.
Mm-hmm. So to some degree, the book reflects the learnings that both of you had in your respective roles.
Yeah. Here's an example that I've been using with my fellow colleagues whenever I do presentations or whenever I do a speaking engagement. I would say, here is the deal for you guys. Read my book, and if the book is absolutely transparent, if everything is totally clear, we are in peace. But if there is a chapter that is so obscure and convoluted or complex, just give me a call and I will buy you lunch. Because, at the end of the day, my overall promise is that the book must be a way to communicate a very complex concept, and the concept is IT. Mm-hmm. And, the truth of the matter, if you look at the cases on the book, this is exactly the same message my fellow colleagues have said. The book is very transparent, very crispy, very clear to understand. Which in a way is para-complex, because normally IT subject matters tends to be very convoluted, very complex.
And as I read through the book, I think it also has a nice balance of, in Chapter 1, there are quotes from a number of leaders. As you said, every chapter concludes with specific actions. You share several business models so that people, if they don't have an MBA, they get to see what are some of the critical concepts that help drive an organization. And I agree that chapters are clearly written and easy to follow, so that you can have those conversations with another person over lunch. Now, one of the things that you sent me with the book was an excerpt, and at the bottom of the excerpt, it said, the uncomfortable CEO reading experience should guide your steps to lead your IT organization into the highest leverage functions. Our recommended 30 CEO leadership actions will make the most of the competitive advantage between the CEO and the IT community at large. By honestly following them all, you will strengthen your company's ability to be fast, flexible, responsive, and versatile in the rapidly changing business environment of this 21st century. In putting together that excerpt, what are some lessons learned in doing the writing? I know that you speak all over the world. What are some of the key lessons learned that you'd like to pull out of the experience of being a CIO, of traveling, of being an author, that would be relevant for our audience?
Well, there are kind of two main lessons. The first one, so whenever you do the talking about the cost, you should always present the value along with the cost. Or say it differently, we should never explain the cost without explaining the value. Because if you do so, everything you are doing in life is going to be too expensive. So there is kind of a rule of thumb. Every time you mention something about cost, you have to present the value side by side. At least there is a way to compensate the cost with an equivalent value. The second one is more about kind of how should we really approach our fellow colleagues in the business. So I think you could say it's probably common sense, but oftentimes we don't even use it. So we need to understand them very well. We need to appreciate their concerns. And in a way, we need to find mutual solutions that really build the company together. So I have seen examples where people really say, this is the business master plan, and here is the IT strategy. And the IT strategy may not necessarily even get connected with the business master plan, which seems to be really odd. So in a way, it needs to be mutual beneficial for the entire corporation.
Absolutely. So, Jose, it's been really fascinating to have an opportunity to hear you kind of crystallize the chapters and pull out some of the lessons learned and key takeaways. In the remaining minute, what's the final thought that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, two things, and this is similar to what I have said previously. So there is plenty of ways that people can find me on the internet. So you have my email, my website, my portal. So if you read a book and you find out that the book is totally complex, that you don't get any value from the book, here's the offer. Give me a call, send me an email, and I will buy you lunch. Because I do believe sincerely that the book is so transparent, so crispy, that people will read the whole message very clearly. So this is an offer for everybody who's listening to us. So send me a note that the message is very complex, that I didn't manage any explanation very effectively for the regular reader, both the business leaders as well as the IT community. That's what I have to say, Franne.
Well, that is a very generous offer, and in terms of putting value first, I would encourage our listeners, in fact, to contact you or visit your website, which is www.CIOEUREKA, that's EUREKA.com, and that they can certainly pick up a copy of The Uncomfortable CEO, Making Information Technology Overcome Business Uncertainty. They should read the book. They can follow you on Twitter, CEO Eureka, And you are also on LinkedIn. So that, again, and I would say that once they've read the book, I would encourage them to send you an email and perhaps identify an idea that they, in fact, shared over lunch with their CEO or CIO and give you an update on what they discovered. So thank you so much for being our guest tonight, and best wishes and your future opportunities to share more about your book.
Oh, thank you very much for this opportunity, Franne.
You're welcome.